the Scrim Podcast.
All right, so welcome to the Scrimpcast. We don't have our boy Jared here with us today. It's just me and Mike. Today, I guess we're going to talk about uh, mental health crises in capitalism, and probably a little bit about the systems of hierarchy that we have in our society. Or we'll just talk about some dumb shit. Who cares?
Yeah, it's probably gonna. Uh, the discourse does what the discourse wants to. You know what I mean? It goes where it wants to go.
It wanders mostly
Yeah.
because I can't keep a fucking straight line of thought for any
Yeah.
period of time. Crooked in that way.
Yeah, aren't we all? So I see a lot online, specifically on Left Book, but it might be in other places. That people say they talk about the mental health crisis we have in the United States and also in other industrialized countries like the Western Europe. That mental health is a big problem, right? It's a crisis, but people argue that it's exacerbated or caused by capitalism. So I want to talk a little bit about that because I personally have never been hospitalized for a mental health crisis, but people in my life have, including in my family. And there's a lot of mental health issues in my family. I would say I probably have some mental health issues as well, substance abuse and fucking anxiety and depression. But we don't have to get that personal. We can talk about maybe if capitalism has something to do with the mental health crisis.
Yeah, there's actually a ton of points I want to make off of that. Is certain people would definitely be in need of mental health care in any society that you created, right?
Of course.
So there's a certain type of person who is going to just need that type of care. But under capitalism, my second point, in one way, it creates a lot of these problems. So the conditions that some of these people are living in, it's no wonder they're depressed and suicidal. Like, capitalism creates these conditions.
Yes.
Also, capitalism prevents people who are suffering under these conditions from getting the care they need, because you can't, if you're living in a system like the system that we have right now, if you're having a severe mental health crisis and you need to go to the hospital for 2 or 3 weeks, that is just not an option for a lot of people under the system that we have. You just can't not get paid for 3 weeks. It's just not an option. I guess those are the main 2 points. So
yeah, that's definitely a point. And to like flesh it out, like I'll say personally for myself, like I've had a lot of times where like how do I put it? I'll keep it like kosher. I'll keep it kosher. Like I really want to quit smoking cigarettes, which I think is like cigarette smoking and addiction. It is an addiction. It's rooted in anxiety and I guess just an addictive personality because you want to. You need the dopamine rush, whatever. I'm not a psychologist or a psychoanalyst, but anyways, I wouldn't be able to quit smoking. In my rationale is that I can't quit smoking cigarettes because I can't take a rupture. I can't have a break. There can be no rupture from my normal functioning in the capitalist system. So I like the way that I've quit before. The way that I've done so is I'll take a week off of work, and then I'll detox and I'll make new habits for myself. So that's like a very simple way of like looking at it. So if you're having a mental health crisis, you need to reorganize the way that you're relating to yourself and to the world is a big way that you can at least learn how to adapt to your mental your mental state. You know what I mean? And your behavioral state. So if you can't take time off of work, especially you're not going to be able to do anything. But also if you have no health insurance, there's no access to healthcare. There's no way that you're going to be able to address these issues.
Yeah, I want to say there is, if you have no, actually in a lot of ways, if you have no healthcare in the United States,
you're better off.
Yeah, you're better off than people who are working a job and have very shit healthcare, which
you're only better off in the sense that you might be able to get Medicare or some kind.
Yeah. If you can get on Medicaid, dude, they will pay for everything. But like, yeah, a lot of people in the United States, they're in a situation where they have healthcare, so they think that they're part of the blessed class, right? I work and I have health care, but the health care that you get in a lot of jobs in the United States, because for some reason it's tied to your employment, but that's besides the point. The health, it's worse.
That's precisely the point, actually.
Well,
but yeah,
but it's worse than what you would get on Medicaid, and that's why it's so funny when they were like, if you like your doctor, you can keep them. You don't need to get rid of your, like, this is always a huge thing in the United States where they're like, if you like your insurance, you can keep it. Dude, people only like their insurance because they're not aware that if you are on Medicaid, you get a lot more assistance, dude. You can go to the hospital for 3 months. I've done it. I've been in the hospital for 3 months when I was on Medicaid, and I didn't pay a dime.
Yeah.
Right?
That's like to counterpoint that, I have insurance. I pay like $200 a week for my insurance. Or $200 a month for my insurance. Gets taken right out of my check because it's connected to my job.
Yep.
And I just had to get a root canal. And with insurance, this is just a thing where they drill your fucking tooth in the canal of your tooth, and they put bleach in it. That's all they do, right? It takes like 45 minutes.
Gets rid of the infection.
Gets rid of the infection, makes sure another infection doesn't come back. That cost me $550 with insurance, right? So, and that caused me mental distress. And so that causes me anxiety because like now I have to work more, which I have been doing. I've picked up a second job to keep up with these bills. So that's even with insurance, right? So like that's what when I say that it exacerbates it can create a mental health crisis. Like I've been like super anxious lately. I haven't been sleeping right. And that's connected to the fact that I can't get health care. I can't get my human needs met without massive pressure being put on me, on my body and my mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's also a good point that, that is a huge cause of mental health, especially anxiety problems in the United States. I don't know the exact number, but it's something like a majority of Americans, over 50%, are like $600 or $700 away from having like a complete crisis, like a $600 fucking health bill away from having a complete financial crisis and breakdown.
Right.
Like if that's the type of system that we have for the people that we like in this country, I don't know what else to say about that. It's really
it's disgusting.
It's disgusting. Yeah.
Yeah. And here's the number of people. Actually, I thought this was what you were going to say about anxiety. And it says here, I'm just looking at the Anxiety and Depression Association of America website. It says 40 million adults in the United States, age 18 and older, 18% of the population every year suffer from an anxiety disorder or like a panic attack or whatever. And only 36% of those people receive any kind of treatment. And I would argue a lot of the treatment that people get for these is not acceptable because they just basically throw Xanax at people. And I don't know if that's
adequate.
That's not adequate. That's not actually addressing the cause of people's anxiety largely. That just makes them able to bear the anxiety. You know what I mean? Right. It doesn't actually address
it gets you semi-drunk, so that way you just aren't anxious anymore. That's actually a huge problem with capitalism and liberalism, period, is that whenever you if you spend a lot of time listening to leftists talk, you'll hear things like let's examine the core of this issue or whatever. Let's try and change the conditions that create this issue. But like liberals and capitalists, if you spend time listening to people like Ben Shapiro or even like Hillary Clinton or whatever, all they want to do is just address the fucking outcomes, right? So they'll like Hillary Clinton or not Hillary Clinton specifically, but the Clintons, right? Their solution to the crime wave that was happening in the 1990s was to just incarcerate more people. It's like, in a way, that does solve the problem for the people who are like rich and they don't like the crime, but it's not solving the root cause of the issue. It's just attacking the outcomes.
Yeah, that was after a decade of the crack cocaine epidemic, and they nowhere in any of the response to any of that crime wave that went through the late 80s or through the mid 80s to the mid 90s, and nowhere in that response did they say, where's this cocaine coming from? Because, you know, people in the hood or even people in the suburbs, they don't have access to wherever the cocaine is coming from. You know what I mean? So somebody with money is bringing that cocaine in. You know what I mean? And that's a whole different discussion. But just wanted to say that.
Yeah, good point. Is basically what you're trying to say is we need to build a higher wall.
Yeah. Well, I'm not.
I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. Yeah, but also nowhere in that entire discourse during the 90s, during the crack cocaine epidemic, was really anyone who was on, who's on like the mainstream media, the lamestream media, as I like to call them. None of these people were talking about, you know, let's set up places where let's fucking help these people. It was all let's fucking detain and punish these evil actors, right?
Yeah.
There was no, so that discourse was entirely just missing. There was no like, let's find a way to get these people off of the pipeline where they're just smoking a bunch of crack and robbing people. We'll maybe put them into a facility where they can rehabilitate their lives. It was just that we'll put them into jail, which as everybody knows is not rehabilitating anyone. If like at the very least it's just locking them away for a period of time until they can come back out and do the exact same thing. At the worst, which is most likely what it's doing, it's putting them into a place where they will, the way that they survive in jail is going to force them to be more criminal and more violent when they return to normal society. Right. Because jail is not normal society. It's just not. The rules there are different.
Right. And so that the question is why aren't these people like nobody? So people will say like, all right, drug abuse is a problem and the crime that surrounds it is a problem. Nobody's
a mental health problem.
It's a mental health problem, but they're not even talking about that. They're just saying these results from these things that are happening in society, these crimes are a problem. We're going to get rid of the criminals. We're just going to lock them away. Nobody's saying, why are these crimes happening? Why is this mental health crisis happening? And that's what I think we need to address is especially like if you come to addiction, anxiety, depression specifically, these are crises or these are diseases of civilization. These are not diseases you see in what's the word I'm looking for? I guess like I don't want to say uncivilized, but places that are untouched by civilization and capitalist civilization. They don't exist in I guess rainforest tribes, indigenous tribes, right? That shit was imported. It's they're diseases of civilization. I'll just put it like that.
They are, because really, if you think about it, if you just want to sit somewhere and shoot up heroin every day or drink until you pass out, the reason that you're trying to do that is because the type of life that is available to you is so fucking abhorrent to you that what you'd rather just tap out of it and just pretend that it doesn't exist for a couple hours or whatever. So that's definitely a civilizational problem that we have to look at. It's not a problem with the individual people who are succumbing to this.
That's exactly what it is. So I guess my point is, as a socialist, we have to, as socialists, Marxists, and anarchists, you have to look at the structural reason why this shit is happening, and your response to it has to be structural. Our response can't just be, put these people in a mental hospital that they can't afford for extended periods, which is what would be necessary to get someone out of a crisis and I guess back to a functional stage, or we throw drugs at them, which some people, I'm not saying people don't need to have psychiatric drugs because that's going to save people's lives, but it's not solving the problem of what got somebody to this point. And also I reject I guess it's kind of a liberal notion. I mean, it's not like politically liberal, but maybe that's the wrong word. It's a notion in modern society that mental illnesses are all genetic. And I don't know if that's 100% true because you can't you can't isolate the genetic you can't isolate the genome that causes anxiety or depression, but you can see there's some correlation, but I don't know if there's exactly causation.
Well, that's the thing about genetics is there's always like a correlation. But yeah, nobody, if you go to a mental health hospital, nobody's going to say, you know what, you're just genetically predisposed to be a like worthless member of society, and we're just going to do what we can here and then throw you out. They have cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavioral therapy are the two big ones that they like to use in there.
Yeah.
I only know this because I'm in there. I'm not an expert on it. I've been into a mental hospital. But what they do is they try and give you some resources, and it's really funny. They give you resources to cope with reality.
Right.
That is exactly what it is. It's just, okay, you have to, in dialectical behavioral therapy, they tell you have to be extremely, like, I forget the words that they use, but
like vigilant.
No, you can't make any excuses or anything like that. You just have to accept reality as the way it is to an extreme level, right? Where you're just like, this is the way it is. It sucks ass. And then they teach you after you've been at that level to cope with that. So this is obviously like, these are the cutting edge fucking ways they're treating these people in hospitals. And the main point is cope. So that tells you something about how it's actually created by the society we live in. It's not, the thing isn't, well, we get you on these pills. They do put you on pills because it will help you if you're in a crisis to bring yourself back to a different level, like a normal-ish level. And then once you're on the pills and not in a crisis mode, they teach you how to cope with the type of life that you have.
Right. And but then they're never going to be like, oh, here's a stipend to get you out of the shitty situation. They're never going to be like, oh, let's move you to a better neighborhood. Let's help you get a new job. They're never going to do that.
Because they can't. It'd be way too expensive. And
right.
Like, it would be way too, like, these facilities, they're great, but they're not.
Obviously the facilities wouldn't be able to do that, but I'm saying as a society,
yeah,
we should. That's the way that we should be addressing these mental health crises in a way that could actually keep people from having more mental, because people who have one mental health crisis are more likely to have another one.
But to come back to basically the entire reason we ever even have this podcast is that is not something that is profitable. That will never be profitable to do.
No.
So actually addressing these problems, it's not profitable. So under capitalism, if it's not profitable, it will just never happen.
Never gonna happen.
Yeah, it will never happen. So that's something to think about, folks.
So that's something to think about for sure. And I because I have people that have been in the mental health facility, and I don't think that their mental health has their problems have been addressed. Mostly because I don't think because their lives haven't actually gotten better; they've actually gotten worse.
Yeah. Well, I think they've been addressed to the extent that something like a mental health facility under capitalism can.
Yeah. So the people in my life that have been in mental health facilities are no longer in a suicidal crisis. So they're not, in that sense, the mental health.
That is the only goal.
The only goal is to
keep someone
in
a crisis. You get them out of the crisis, and then you toss them back out to the wolves.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem. Is that nobody's hunting the wolves. We need to hunt the wolves. Okay, we don't need to throw people back to the wolves. Is my point. If you know what I mean by saying hunt the wolves, is we need to address the housing crisis. We need to address all the crises of capitalism. And the mental health, like I'm not, and maybe Greg wants to push up against this because he was saying something earlier before we're on the podcast that mental health crises will exist in like let's say a socialist organization, like a society that's organized against capitalism. So I'm not saying that mental health crises won't exist under capitalism, but capitalism, like Greg said, is just the way they address it is they make it so that you're not going to be in a crisis mode. And then they throw you back to the wolves from which you were probably made you more anxious or depressed or wanting to check out,
Yeah. And capitalism itself is the issue here because the only like the way that capitalism um fixes issues that arise in a capitalist society is to find ways to make it profitable to selfish actors to fix the issue, right?
Right.
So even when you talk to capitalists or liberals about how they want to fix the climate issue, their answer is, well, what we're going to do is we're going to um, make it so that it's less profitable to exploit and destroy our ecosystem and
Right.
more profitable to not do that. And it's like, why is profit the only fucking consideration here? That is a huge problem with capitalism that a lot of people, I don't know, maybe actually, I think everyone addresses it. Come on, it is a huge fucking problem.
Yeah, that's the main problem. Is that the profit motive is the main problem.
And if there's no way to actually make the way in which you would address a problem profitable, it will just never be solved. It will just be thrown into a corner of things that they're bad, but
this is just the way it is. It's just
it's
something.
the way life is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's some ways, there are some things in life where it's always going to be bad, and that's just the way being alive is.
Like we're never going to overcome death. Like we're always going to have to face mortality. We're always going to have to face the physical world, like nature, like rain and fucking storms and shit like that. But other than that, like there's not much that can't be changed in a social way.
So we can't change the fact that being born as a human and the main driving thing in your life is to survive, but inevitably everyone dies, and it's just a cruel joke. No one's gonna fix that. There's a type of depression that comes from that a lot of people have a problem with, but there's also just depression and extreme anxiety from all of the not being able to afford a place to live or your kids or something like that.
Yeah, and then you feel like a piece of shit. You're anxious about getting your next check. You're not a good enough man. You're not a good enough mother. You're not a good enough woman. Whatever. Yeah.
A lot of people don't even get into that existential angst where it's like,
because you don't have
being alive is a joke because you don't have time. Yeah, it's just relentless. Life is just relentless, and it just stacks more and more shit upon you. So there's no way they'd even be able to think about something like that. So the type of depression that most people are dealing with isn't some existential fucking intellectual exercise. It's reality. It's the reality of their life.
Which under capitalism.
Yeah.
Because as we know, capitalism at this point is a closed system on the planet Earth. There's not very many pockets where capitalism isn't driving production, isn't driving social reproduction, and so on.
Yeah. Is there any really?
I mean, there's a couple pockets. I mean, but the tendrils of capitalism are even in places like Cuba and in Vietnam. And
really,
even China too. I mean, you could argue if China's socialist or not.
Yeah, we're not going to get into that.
We're not going to get into that.
But the point is that almost all of the world is capitalism. So you say like Cuba, Vietnam, China. We'll say that maybe they aren't capitalist, right? But just the fact that the entire world is running on this capitalist system, you're going to have to integrate with the capitalist economy at some point.
Period.
You can't be, especially someplace like Cuba. You can't just be Cuba and like everything that you need to exist as a people and a country, you're just going to get from your tiny little fucking island.
I mean, I'll make this argument though. Society in Cuba is different. It's not the same kind of relentless dog eat dog that we have in the.
No, I'm just saying that.
But they're existing in the global capitalist structure, so there is going to be pressures on them, no matter what, even if that isolated. I
wasn't being critical of Cuba. The point was that they are going to have to interact with a capitalist world because they're just a small island.
They're encircled by capitalism. Yeah.
And they don't have all the resources they need either.
Right.
To have a modern type of way of life and if they were all like, oh, we'll just make spears and wooden shields and.
Well, it's still not going to work for a mass society.
For a mass society. Yeah. But if they killed off one, whatever. What I'm trying to say is that they could do, even if they tried to go back to like an extremely primitive society where they could actually live off the land that they live on and just their island, the first thing that would happen is the rest of the world would just immediately take them over. So
Right.
yeah, I wasn't being critical of Cuba. I don't know why I'm going into this fucking
No,
tangent.
I was just saying that I was just making the point that in Cuba I'd say probably it's less dog eat dog than it is in, like, let's say New York City. You know what I mean? Like their society isn't as dog eat dog because there is a state that is dedicated to socialism. So
Right. Well, in a way, if you're in
those,
Cuba, if you're in Cuba and suddenly you injure your wrist and you can't work in your auto factory job anymore, you don't just lose your insurance. You can't.
that's my point. That is exactly my point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree with that. Yeah, and that is fucking like the way that that healthcare is set up in the United States is so fucking mind blowing to anyone who even like thinks about it for a second about how stupid it is. It'd be like your healthcare is tied to your job. If you have the type of injury that it stops you from working the job that you had, there's a few ways that you can try and not get fired, but a lot of times your employers are going to be looking every single day for ways to fire you for that, in which case you'll lose your insurance because they want you to output a certain amount. And if that changes, every single day they're going to be trying to fire you. And there's so many rules in the modern workplace where if someone is paying attention to you enough, you can get fired. Let's be real about it.
I'll put it one way. If my bosses were paying a lot more attention to me, I would have been fired a long time ago.
Yeah, because not everyone, for a while you can be that perfect machine who does like 200% productivity and you're like the man, right? But over time, as you do that for years and years and years, you're going to slip. You're going to chill. Maybe you'll stop, take a breather for a second, sit down because your legs hurt for like 10 minutes, and that's not on break time. If they really, really watch you, anyone can get fired from their job.
Yeah, but let's say you get an injury, right? You don't even if you don't get fired from your job, like let's say it's not a workplace injury, you break your arm. So, and let's say you're a waitress or a waiter, you can't carry trays anymore, right?
Right.
So you can't be a waitress or a waiter. You might not lose your job. Let's say like I live in Massachusetts, or I work in Massachusetts. You can't fire somebody for something like that, right? They would just go on disability. But you're still, if you're on disability, you're only getting 2/3 of your paycheck. So now you're only living off 2/3 of your regular income, right? And then you also have these health costs, and then
on top of that,
and then that leads into a mental health crisis because you have to worry about being able to make ends meet. So basically my point is that American capitalism is always, it's pushing people into mental health crisis. The way that it's set up is that more than likely you or somebody you know is going to be pushed into a mental health crisis. And as capitalism in America deteriorates, we're going to see more and more of it. And I think that's evident by not only the statistics, but you can just talk to people in your life. I guarantee anybody you know, you could ask 5 people, 2 out of those 5 people are going to be on have had a mental health crisis at some point, or are being medicated for like depression or anxiety or what have you. That's not even considered
2 out of 5. Yeah, that's pretty low number, dude. I would say 4. Like, how often do you really meet someone? And
I'm saying somebody who's medicated or actually has had like clinically said like, oh, they've had a mental health crisis.
Yeah, but for the reasons that we talked about before, a lot of people who are suffering from these issues are just not going to ever see a doctor, right?
Yeah. So, myself included. I've had a mental health crisis before. I've never been to a hospital because it never got bad enough where my life was endangered in any immediate way. So that's why I didn't go to the hospital. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've had panic attacks. I've had substance abuse problems. Like the only time I've ever, I'll just put it from someone like me who didn't have insurance for a long, long time. The only time I ever went to see a doctor was when I thought I was going to die. And that's how it is for a lot of people.
That is how it is for most people in the United States. And partially that's because seeing a doctor is scary and a lot of people don't want to do it. They don't want to be told exactly like what's wrong with them. Another part of it is that they just don't have the means to.
Yeah, I think I think the whole like doctors are scary thing, like that's hooked up. That's a whole nother thing. But like I'd say for me personally, I'm not afraid of doctors. I'd rather get treated, and like that's their job is to treat you. my whole thing is like, I'm not going to go to the doctor every time I cough or sneeze. Because I'm not going to fucking pay for it. I'm not paying for that shit. I would rather fucking die than, you know what I mean? Like,
I'm not going to go to the doctor every single time I have crippling chest pains.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Come on. If I went there every time I had crippling chest pains, I'd be broke.
Yeah,
but exactly. Go there if it gets so bad I can't breathe.
That's like another meme I actually saw online, and it was like, oh, you know how many people in like the millennial and Zoomer, and probably not Zoomers, but millennials, like people like I guess now like 25 to 40, I guess is a millennial now. They're like, oh, almost all my friends at some point have said they had severe chest pains, and nobody goes to the hospital. Nobody goes to the doctor because we're like, oh yeah, I've had that too. And it's like, what the fuck? Like,
that's just the thing that happens. You don't want to go to a doctor for it. I mean, that would cause money. That would take some time out of your day. If it would take time away from you being able to work, and even if you're not working, then it would take time of the 4 hours that you have to yourself every day before you go to sleep.
Yeah, right.
It's too much trouble, man.
It's too much trouble.
Yeah, I mean, as long as the chest pain goes away after 30 to 35 minutes.
30 to 35 days. Yeah.
As long as the chest pain doesn't immediately drop you to your knees, gasping for breath where you're about to die, then there's no reason to go see a doctor.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, that's like, I know it's we're like sound funny, but that's actually the consensus amongst people like these days. Like, if you're not dying, don't go to the doctors, because they're probably going to make it like working people. That's the consensus. Like, not even a fucking joke. Yeah. You're not dying, don't go to the doctor.
And also, I don't know really how this ties into mental health or whatever the hell we were talking about, but like, let's say you have a serious medical issue. A lot of places where you work, if you're like, oh my God, I'm about to fucking die, I got to go to the ER. You tell them that, you're going to get like a point, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I can't work, I'm about to die. Well, I'm sorry, that's a point against you. It's like, I don't know. That's something.
That's a mark against you. Yeah.
Yeah. That's not something necessarily that is 100% is because of capitalism, but like,
that's absolutely because of capitalism.
Well, I mean, you could imagine a society where it's not capitalist and you still get points for missing, right? That's what I'm saying.
So. Yeah.
It would be a bad society, one that I wouldn't want to be a part of. You could imagine it. So
yeah.
But it is a part of capitalism in our society. Like, the way that our society is set up is that, you get rid of people whenever you can.
If they're not productive, we want people to be
not productive enough. Yeah. If they're not productive enough and they're not making enough. And the thing is that the Karl Marx wrote about this in Capital, is that a very small portion of the work that you're doing every day is actually paying for what you cost. A vast majority of that is just excess.
Surplus value.
Yeah. It's just surplus value that they're just siphoning off. So they don't only just want you to be a little bit productive. They want to push you to be like as productive as possible.
The maximum.
And if you can't be that productive anymore, they will do everything. The people who own the means of production will do anything that they can to get rid of you and just get someone younger and healthier and more vibrant. It's like, it's really easy to do that. And once you're fucking pushed off to the side once you're fired from the job that they were hiring you to do, because of the way that our system is set up, you might be society's problem still, right?
Yeah.
But you're not their problem anymore. They've got rid of that's
the whole thing. That's literally the thing about capitalism, is it causes all these problems, but it doesn't address the parts of it doesn't address the social problems or ecological problems that it causes, because that's not their realm of responsibility.
There's a word for that, man. It's some type of cost that they would be costs, but they don't matter because they're not in your specific, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, but I know what you mean, but I don't know what that's called.
Yeah, it's like, if we just pump out like a ton of CO2 and fucking, if we make the entire city covered in smog, that is a cost to society, and it's just a cost.
Yeah.
There's someone's going to have to pay for that somewhere. But for the factory that does it, that's not a cost they have to take into consideration.
Right, because it's not actually, it has nothing to do with their like It doesn't have to do with their bottom line. It doesn't have to do with their money. It doesn't have to do with their profit. It doesn't have to do with
they created the issue, but someone else is just going to have to pay for it. So good.
Yeah,
That's great.
That's great for them. Yeah.
Yeah.
But my point is that they're going to have to pay for it.
Well, yeah.
Hopefully.
Well,
Hopefully. We can only hope they will one day pay for it. But yeah, so that comes back like they're the ones like they're creating these exacerbating these mental health crises, and then they're not culpable for it. Culpable.
Yeah, in any case that they might be, they just try to get rid of the issue. The issue to them isn't that so many of these people are having mental health problems. It would be like so many of these people that are working for us are having such bad mental health problems that they can't be as productive as we want them to be. So the issue that capitalism is trying to correct in this context is get those people out of our payrolls. And that if you can do that,
then they're no longer your problem.
Yeah. So but then you have an entire society of broken fucking people who need a lot of help. I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's just not going to get addressed under this system ever. It's not going to. It's not profitable to do it.
Yeah.
And if it's not profitable to do it,
it's not going to be done.
It's not going to be done. And that is the problem with almost every single problem that is a problem with every single. That is a thing about every single like major problem that you can bring up is that you go, this is a huge problem. Is it going to be profitable to fix it? And then people will say, well, maybe we can make it profitable by doing this.
Right.
But the issue is, why should it be profit? It's profitable to me to live on a planet that like, is healthy and vibrant and not like a dead, acrid, fucking yellow, disgusting garbage pile. Right.
Right.
That's profitable to me. I don't know.
It's not, I know what you're saying, but you're not actually. Yeah, I know what you're saying. There's like, it's just not going to make any fucking money.
Yeah, why is whether or not something can make a ton of money for some asshole the main like deciding factor in whether or not it gets addressed?
It's absolutely disgusting.
Yeah. It's bullshit.
It's bullshit. Here's the thing. So the ecological problems that we're facing and the mental health problems we're facing are, in my opinion, those are the same problems because we're alienated from our work, we're alienated from one another, and we're alienated from ecology. Like capital makes us seem like we're not part of nature. We are nature. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if nature is fucked, which it is, of course the organisms on it are going to be suffering from mental health and physical health ailments. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and so
it's all the same problem.
I think Marx wrote about that in Capital. I'll say this again, is that you say we're alienated from our even nature as humans, and in Capital, I'm pretty sure someone might be able to correct me on this. He said basically one of the hugest problems with the type of labor that we're doing in factories, where we cut people off and make them do very simple repetitive tasks, is that these people will be alienated from like the fact that they won't have the type of human experience that one could have if they were able to do anything else besides.
They're alienated from their labor because they don't get to they're alienated from their labor because
they're also alienated from their like human creativity and fucking,
from their
like the way they want to express themselves and all this stuff, because all they're doing is they're sitting there on a line doing the same thing over and over and over again. It makes them very dull and stupid.
Yeah, that's called you're alienated from your species being. That's what it's called. That's what they call it. Is the Marxists call it the species being, which is what it just means. So I'll read it right here real quick, the definition. And this is a deeper thing that you could get into if you wanted to learn more about it. But so species being, Karl Marx understood species being to be the original or intrinsic essence of a species, which is characterized by pluralism and dynamism. All beings possess the tendency and desire to engage in multiple activities to promote their mutual survival, comfort, and sense of interaction. A simplified understanding of species being is that it is a form of self-realization or self-actualization resulting from fulfilling or meaningful work. So that's what you're addressing right there. Is you're alienated
Yeah.
from your species being.
Yeah. See, what I like to do is I like to bring up Capital and then just be as stupid as possible when I'm trying to explain the concept.
Well, I don't know if he actually.
Because I'm just a complete idiot.
I don't know if he actually addresses species being in Capital, but I know.
Yeah. Well, there's 3 volumes, so.
Yeah, but it's more of a sociological thing, so I don't know if because that's more of an economic. I haven't read Capital.
Dude, I actually think he does address it there because the main point. I know my memory is so bad, but I remember specifically that there was a part in there where he said something like, if you like, if I'm taking a fucking mesh and a piece of metal and I put the mesh onto the piece of metal and then I press a button to weld it. All right. That's what I do in my job. Right. I do that. There's nothing meaningful about that work. There's nothing that makes me proud of what I accomplished for that day.
I'm not
engaging.
Yeah.
The only way that I actually engage myself and can even live with the type of work that I do is I just listen to books. I listen to audiobooks. And without that, I would have ended my life a long time ago because I'm not expressing myself or being a real human in any way. I'm like a fucking machine. I'm just a piece of machinery that just fucking
literally you're just an extension of the machine. You're the part of the machine that has to be human. So eventually you're going to be.
And then when they can replace me, then they can outsource me and it's not their problem anymore.
They'll either outsource you or automate you. That's it.
No, I mean, outsource me in like the general sense.
Automation
is also a type of outsourcing.
Right. So, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you want to learn more about species being, by the way, check out Revolutionary Left Radio because that's where I learned about it. He's got, I think, Brett has an episode there on it, and it's good because it's a concept. It's kind of a deep concept.
Yeah, I don't know if it was exactly in Capital. You might be right about that, but Marx did talk about the fact that if you just make like the essence of human being, right? Like you just said, is not just someone who's going to do a simple repetitive task over and over again, right? That will make you either the most dull and stupid person to ever have existed in the history of humankind.
And there's a lot of us in that space.
Yeah. Or it will break you mentally. And we could bring that back to where we started.
Right. It breaks you mentally, or you could say spiritually, whatever. You're going to be.
Yeah. If you like to say spiritually, I don't think Marx would say that.
Right.
He's a renowned atheist or whatever, but
it's still something to consider. Consider your essence is going to be, once you void your essence, then you are going to have a break in your mental health. And it probably, a lot of people would argue also in your physical health, because modern science is saying that if you feel like shit, like mentally, it's going to affect your body. And this is something I can attest to. I have a hypothyroid problem, and some people say it's genetic, but there's some studies that say it's intrinsically connected to your mental well-being.
Well, so it's actually proven scientifically. Y'all can look it up. I'm not going to bring up some nerdy. I'm not going to bring up some nerdy science bullshit. All right, but there is a study that says that depending on where you are at the hierarchy, how much you get shit on by people above you, the people at the bottom have much worse health.
Right.
Like just not just mental health, but just health. Period. Higher heart disease, higher fucking. It's just bad for you to be at the bottom of a hierarchy.
It's bad for your health.
For you to be the whipping boy, right? Yeah.
And so that's I absolutely agree with that that idea. I guess since you're saying it's scientifically been proven, I agree with that fact.
I'm not some kind of science bitch, all right? I'm not going to come to you and say, "Hey, I have looked up the studies or some shit," but look it up. It's somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, that's
probably like the most unprofessional shit, like just the laziest fucking thing anyone could ever do. But it is out there.
Google it. Don't make me do the emotional labor.
Yeah. I'm not going to enact the emotional labor to actually tell you about the bullshit I'm talking about, but you can just trust me. That's just the American way.
Yeah.
Some shit like that.
Yeah. But Yeah, so we have to abolish capitalism. That's pretty much it. Like, there's no other way. But you were saying earlier before something about like uh how mental health crisis might not be only connected to capitalism. It could occur in other systems, and you want to say something about that? And
Yeah,
kind of
the reason, you kind of alluded to that before, but I didn't really want to say something about it because it was kind of pointless. But I'll just throw it out there.
well, fuck it, why not?
If you have a leftist movement where what you're going to do is replace the old managers with new managers, but is basically going to stay the same, I just don't want to be part of it. It has to do with hierarchy and my conception of what I consider leftist, or the scary word that some people might dislike, anarchist. But my conception of leftism is not about replacing the old managers with new ones who will then care about the workers, because I don't think that's going to happen. But really, we're not talking about that here, so I didn't really want to get too much into it.
Okay, so you're just saying basically if your relation to production isn't actually fundamentally changed, then those problems are still going to be, they're going to still be there. You know what I mean? Whether it's social reproduction or social production or material, like actual production of goods. Yeah. So yeah, if
you just replace the old bosses with new bosses and nothing else changes, but then you say, well, it's socialist now because we care about you. Yeah. Do you really want to talk about anarchism?
No, we're gonna save that. We're gonna save that for when we get Big J back on the podcast, because I know you guys have been having some disagreements, and I fall somewhere in the middle because I see the value in both traditions.
Well, I see the value in both traditions too. It's just,
so let's say we established a socialist order, and the things were more. When I say social, I don't mean like, let's say we had like a socialist state. Let's just say that capitalism is left in the dustbin of history, which it should be, and we had a new social order that was centered on the people and their needs, right? So like, we're not going to go into the details of what that might entail because we don't know what that'll look like.
That would be way too much work.
That'd be but let's say we had a more democratic society, like a really democratic society where profit was not the main motivator, and
the well-being
of human beings.
Society,
that would be the driving force, right? That would obviously be better for mental health crisis and for other kinds of health. So basically, if you're a socialist, you should add that into your reasoning for why you advocate for socialism or the abolition of capitalism. We shouldn't just be focusing on, we should be focusing on mental health awareness and acceptance of people that have mental health problems, but we shouldn't just be saying, oh, don't be mean to people. We shouldn't just be basing our politic on representation of people who have mental health problems. We should also be saying, how can we address these mental health problems and connect that to the struggle for socialism? You know what I mean? So because it's in my opinion, socialism will help address a lot of mental health problems that we see. It will help address the diseases of civilization, whether it be diabetes, heart disease, depression, anxiety, and addiction, right? Those to me are the main, and cancer is also it's not directly a civilizational disease because it exists in nature, but it's definitely exacerbated by civilization, capitalist civilization. So we need to talk about that when we're talking about socialism and the abolition of capitalism.
And I know I was gonna say not many socialists would do this, but some will, where it'll be like we're gonna attack people for maybe being ableist or whatever. That's cool. Like, we definitely should.
We definitely
should stop people from being like, these people are inferior to us. Obviously, that's a core tenet of like a social society, but I don't think
that's a solidarity thing.
Yeah, it's a solidarity thing. So it's like, in a society, if we actually address a deeper root than just scolding people for like saying mean things about the mentally ill, if we address it to the point where we have a society that's built on each of us bringing what we can to the table and getting what we need away from it, that won't exist where we have to delineate ourselves between who is like inferior and superior. ideally in a socialist society that shouldn't happen. So I think you can get to the core issue instead of just scolding people. I don't know why I'm saying this, but
No, because you're right. Like somebody might say the wrong thing, like, "Oh, anxiety is that's not a real disease," and then you have some people on the left will say, "Well, that's ableism." Well, you're gonna have to. I mean, it is ableism, and that is we shouldn't accept people that are ableist. But at the same time, just calling someone out for being ableist that's not fucking praxis,
and it's not revolutionary.
It's not revolutionary. It's not doing anything.
Yeah, if we actually change society in a way where it would be like, well, anxiety is a fake disease. No one would say that in a society where everyone was valued for what they bring to the society, you know?
Right. What I'm saying is that if we start to frame anxiety and depression as diseases that are exacerbated by capitalism
or created by it, that's a good point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if they're because I'm sure
anxiety, not entirely, but
anxiety exists outside of capitalism. Depression exists outside of capitalism, but capitalism is fueling the crisis of those diseases. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. When I was saying created, I meant like they're creating a lot more people than in like a different type of. Yeah. So exacerbating is actually the word. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just trying to make sure I don't leave. I don't fuck up my speech too much. So yeah, we have to actually connect the crisis of capitalism to the crisis of mental health, and that to me is more effective than just yelling "you're an ableist" at people.
For sure.
Which mostly just happens online anyway, so who fucking cares?
Yeah,
but,
I know.
But it does
we're
happen.
Also online.
But we're also, I'm fucking terminally online person, so I feel like I have to, you know what I mean? Like
that's an entirely different issue. It's like, oh well, these are just terminally online people, but it's like everybody in the society is terminally online because that's the only fucking that's the only like real type of social interaction you can even have now. It's like
and that fucking even the mainstream says like, oh, these new technologies are these social media is causing all this mental health problems.
You want to talk for 6 more hours about
no, but I'm saying social media is a fucking the way that social media is organized is in a capitalist sense. The algorithm boosts the shit that fucking creates more tension because conflict is more fun to watch than people just talking about what they had for breakfast that day.
And if you have more conflict, more people are going to click on it, right? It's
exactly. Like, so that's what exasperates.
That's the entire point of the algorithm is to get people to pay attention. And
so that's the same. Yeah. It's the same thing. That's the whole point is that causes mental health issue because it's based on profit. It's not based on actual socializing with people.
It's not based on what is the best thing for our society right now. It's based on how many people can we get to show up to the Civil War. It's like eventually that's real great in the very, very short term, but eventually, man, you're not.
Yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fucking problems. So mental health is a socialist. We have to have solidarity with people that are suffering mental health, and the best thing you can do to be the most in most solidarity with the people suffering from mental health crisis is to oppose capitalism and connect those crises with capitalism. So basically, going back to the intro, is Left Book right about capitalism being something that causes more mental health crises and it keeps people from getting help? Yes, absolutely. Fuck capitalism. They're causing not just problems in the workplace, they're causing mental health crisis, ecological crisis, and everything under the sun is.
And capitalism is not equipped to deal with it either.
They can't do it. Cannot address.
They're creating a lot of these problems. They can't deal with it. They can't address them.
So the crisis is capitalism, and that's basically it. Bye from the scripts. Capitalism is the crisis.